So let me start my talk. So I'm going to speak on some lesser known shell objects of the Indus Valley civilization with special reference to Gujarat. Now this special reference to Gujarat, I think I have not put it in my title before, which must have appeared in the abstract. That was a little hurriedly done, so it's not there. So as we all know that the Indus Valley civilization, I won't go into details about it, because the seminar is about this whole civilization and already previous speakers have been all the time introducing this whole civilization, how it began and where it is located. So in this particular civilization, a very characteristic feature of it has been the discovery of numerous shell objects. And these are mostly made from marine shells. These have been reported from almost all its sites, which are spread across parts of present-day Pakistan, northern India, and western India. So we find that these mostly are bangles, beads, inlays, rings, weights, and so forth. And mainly these, what research we have been doing so far has shown that they were basically being used as some sort of daily ornaments, as ritualistic objects. Sometimes they were also being used in domestic matters, such as inlays in furniture and things like that. You also find them associated with burials as burial goods. So you find that shell objects seem to have played a very important role, very significant in the lives of the Harappan people or the Indus Valley civilization people. Now, when you look at the rich archaeomalcological data, as I would call it, that is the study of such kind of shell objects which come from archaeological sites, we find that so much of data has been now today generated. It basically started with the excavations at Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, and a lot of shell objects were reported from there. And following it, now we have a lot of data which has been in the recent years coming from the region of Gujarat. So on this basis, we can identify that Gujarat was a very key region for shell working or the manufacture of shell objects which were being utilized by the Harappan people. Now, here you can see this shows the map of Gujarat region, where a large number of shell working sites have been reported. And this is again a lot of work which has been done by the University of MS University, Baroda, then even my own home institute, Deccan College, the Gujarat State Archaeology Department, the Archaeological Survey of India. So all these institutions, through their excavations, have yielded a very rich archaeomalcological data for this particular region. And so what we see is have some very important sites like, Nageshwar, Kuntasi, Bagasra, and a recent one is on which I have been working on is the site of Dholavira, which has also yielded large quantities of shell remains. Now coming to my main topic, that is before I go into that, one reason which always has been asked is that why did the Indus Valley people or why did the Harappan people sort of come and occupy Gujarat, or, what was their need for expanding into these regions was basically to a large extent looking for raw materials like stone. And one important reason was also looking for shell material, which basically comes from the Gulf of Kutch, which is very close by. And that is why it is not very surprising that we see so many shell working sites which are located along the southern shores of the Gulf of Kutch. So you have sites like Nageshwar, Kuntasi, Bagasra, and Shikarpur. And of course, Dholavira is quite distant away. So it is because of this Gulf of Kutch where such large quantities or large diversity of molluscan shells are found today, even today. And it is also a habitat for these two very important gastropods or large shells the Harappans use, that is Turbinella pyrum and Chicorius ramosus. And so what we see is that although the Gulf of Kutch yields a very diverse range of molluscan species, both bivalves and gastropods, but it is these two large species which have been most extensively used by the Harappans. So these are some of the waste material, complete shells, which we get it at almost all the sites which have been found in the region of Gujarat. You go to Saurashtra, you go to Kutch, you do come across some remains of these particular shells, suggesting that shell working was being carried out at these sites. So what was being produced was basically they were producing this very beautifully crafted shell objects like beads, bangles, and inlays, rings, some kind of columnar objects. So which shows that they were using a very, very advanced, complex shell working techniques were being used. And the basic reconstruction of the whole shell working industry was initially, has been done by, credit goes to Professor Kenoyer, who has worked in the very extensively on the material from sites like Mehergarh, then Mohenjo-daro, Harappa. And so today, a lot of our information about the shell working technology used by the Harappans is available from his research and from the later researchers as well, myself included. So when I was, as I have been studying many of the shell material which comes from sites like Kuntasi, Shikarpur, then Bagasra also, and currently I'm looking at Khirsara, then I'm looking at the material from Dholavira. It shows that this is something very repeatedly we see items like bangles, inlays. These are found at almost all the excavated Harappan sites. But then I was also coming across certain objects which you don't find them so commonly occurring, and they are very tiny, and even many of the reports also do not mention them, and somehow they seem to be sort of ignored or not stressed upon or even worked upon. And that is why I thought that this is something, these objects are in a way very significant, although they are not very well known. And these have been found and reported from some of our sites like Kuntasi, Padri, recently at Kotada Badli, and also at Dholavira. Now, these objects are very small, they are isolated. I mean, you do not find them in large numbers like what you would say in the case of bangles or beads. And you also see that the occurrences are, they are not found at all the sites. They would be sort of found at sites where we do get these other shell objects like bangles and beads, and in a way they are quite uncommon. And we also see that these are mainly made not using those other large marine gastropods which were basically used for making those bangles and beads, but we have some other species which are being used. So these are very simple made objects from shells, where the whole shell might have been used, or it might have been just perforated, it might have been just abraded and then made into a simple object. So the type of shells which we find being used are freshwater shells, you have marine shells, and you have shells which are also of estuarine origin, that is mainly coming from some kind of a brackish water habitat. So what we are seeing is that these objects are definitely very simple, and they do not display the complex shell working techniques which you see in the case of these very commonly occurring bangles, beads, ladles, inlays, and things like that. And also, we find that the context and function of these is never very clear, because these do get reported in some of the reports, but beyond their description, we do not have any other information about where they are found and what even trying to understand what their role might be. So that is why I thought that this is something very interesting, and it needs to be really further explored, because these objects could also give us a lot of information which otherwise maybe some of these more commonly occurring objects may not be able to give. So I have selected the first is the site of Kuntasi, from where this was a part of my actually PhD work done quite some time ago in the 90s. And here we did find a lot of shell working was happening at this particular site. But from here, I have reported perforated shell pendants. And this particular site, Kuntasi, it was excavated in the late 1980s. It was excavated by Deccan College in collaboration with the Gujarat State Archaeology Department. So Professor Dhavlikar, Y.S. Chittalwala, and M.K. Rawal were the excavators of this site. Now, this site had it is very close to the Gulf of Kutch, and it was supposed to have been identified as some kind of a industrial working site. So it has got this one complex called as a Western Industrial Complex, where they were doing all kinds of stone bead making, pottery making, and even shell working was also one of the activities. The excavators also believe that Kuntasi might have served as some kind of a little port site because it is, due to its location, very close to the shores of the Gulf of Kutch. So this is the chronology where it has been divided basically into two periods, period 1 and period 2, where it is, you have the period 1 is the mature Harappan, and it has been divided into two phases. And it was succeeded by a late Harappan phase, and this whole site fell into the time bracket of, say, 2400 to nearly 1700 BC. So this site, besides giving, evidence for such kind of industrial activity, it was also quite a fairly large shell working site. And another evidence what we get from the site is that besides eating terrestrial mammals as their food, the local inhabitants were also doing shellfish gathering from the local nearby tidal mud flats. So here you can see some of these oyster shells and some of these large clams which were being eaten by the local people, and they were being regularly collected. So these are the perforated shell pendants which were found at this particular settlement, and they were found in both the periods where you have, so this is a particular shell called as the window pane oyster. It is also, the scientific name is Placuna placenta. Now, this particular shell it occurs in sort of, it is not in a completely marine environment, but it occurs mostly in wherever you have mangroves, you have mud flats, and a sort of a muddy kind of environment, you will find these shells lying there in large quantities. And these shells, if you see in our whole archaeological record, we do not find them reported from any other Harappan site, or even in the later cultural periods, we do not see any evidences for its utilization. The latest what we can come to the utilization of this particular species is in the last century, when in places like Goa, people were using, especially the Portuguese, they introduced the use of these particular shells as window panes, and that is why it is known as a window pane oyster. And even today, some of the old houses in Goa, if you can locate, you will see that instead of glass panes, they were using this particular Placuna placenta as their window panes. Also, Placuna placenta in the last, in the 19th century, or even in the 18th century, there was fishery both in the Gulf of Kutch as well as in the Thana Creek near the Mumbai coast, where these particular shells were being fished for their pearls. These are very small, tiny seed pearls, which might be used, which were being used in the medicine industry. Now, their use at Kuntasi is something very unique, because we are not finding similar kind of pendants at other sites. These are very, very that way fragile. If you look at them, they are sort of very flat objects, and they have a kind of an umbo, which is their natural characteristic feature of this particular shell. So what we find is that some of them were definitely perforated, especially you can see these kind of perforations which are there, and the shells which were being used were fairly small. And because the larger the shell gets, what happens is it tends to become what you would call it as translucent, quite opaque. But when they are in their much younger condition, when the shell is very, very small, will find that it is really very transparent, and something like this. This is also from, this is one very fine example which we have from Kuntasi. It is a very small shell pendant, and it has been very well perforated also. This was of course taken with a microscope image. Similarly here also you will see, just to see the perforations. Now we find that at least 19 pendants, such perforated pendants, were found at this part. I was able to identify. And if you look at the proportion of this shell as regards to, say, the large marine gastropod used in the shell, this shell was probably the second largest to be used. So it's quite likely that it was also a major manufacturing center for these particular shell pendants. But since we don't find them at any other site, so one really wonders that were they really going out of the site to some other places, to some other sites for use, or they were just being locally used. So here we have some microscopic images where I had tried to study the perforations just to see, because what happens is, as we all know, that sometimes a lot of shells which are found from the sandy beaches, especially the dead shells, also contain a lot of holes in them, which are made by some kind of a boring animal. They might be naturally perforated. So it's always, when we get such kind of perforated objects, and especially such objects where not much of working is done, this is the basic shape of the cell, that is the natural shell. So here you will find that the edges have been slightly abraded to make it more rounded, more circular, more sort of oval shape. And perforation was done basically in this particular region, which was a slightly more thicker part of the region. So you find that sometimes they were singly perforated like this, or they were doubly perforated. So you have one perforation here, and then you have one perforation at the other end. And to identify whether they were really artificially perforated, that is why using microscopic images, it was possible to show that definitely these had been, some kind of a boring tool had been used, or some kind of a drill also might have been used to make these very tiny perforations. So these are basically made from this particular shell, which in their natural shape also they occur as large circular discs. They sort of resemble mica sheets, whoever is familiar with mica, how it looks. And they are definitely very fragile. So that is why maybe at many of the sites, probably their preservation might have been hampered because of their poorly preserved nature. And you find that at Kuntasi, this was the second highest raw material to be used, and as much as 83 complete to fragmented shells were identified. And we had that in the mature period, they were maximum, because much of the large-scale industrial activity which was happening at Kuntasi was during its mature phase, and shell working is also seen in this particular phase, which also continues into the late Harappan period as well. So here we find that only 33 shells were fairly complete, and out of these you find that 19 shells were identified as pendants, because based on their modifications as well as their perforations. And these were all mostly found in the Western Industrial Complex, not that much with the residential complex. So it is proposed that probably these were sort of being manufactured and maybe kept for either export to other sites, or maybe for locally to be used. So just to give you an idea about the kind of habitats from where these shells might have been collected. So this shows that for the people at Kuntasi, it was not very far that they had to go in order to collect this particular shell. You have this kind of a muddy, mud-flat kind of environment all along the southern shores of the Gulf of Kutch. And many of these sites are located at least 4-5 kilometers away from the shoreline. And here you can see this is how this particular shell occurs in its natural condition, where it is sort of appears to be stacked up, but this is how its natural habitats are. So This particular shell, the inhabitants really didn't have to go very far off. They were locally collecting them, maybe along with other, bivalves such as oysters, clams, which they were collecting from a similar mudflat kind of environment, having even mangroves also, because at Kundasi we have a lot of shells which suggest that there was a mangrove kind of environment from where these shells were being collected. So collection was quite easily possible for these particular inhabitants at Kundasi. Now, I was trying to look for some kind of parallels at other settlements as well. And then I came across this particular perforated pendant from the site of Nageshwar. I have not been able to really get to see the actual specimen which might be there in their museum or in their repository. But I got this picture from the report, and this also looks fairly like what this particular Placuna placenta shell would be. And this is another example which is there, which I also located at the site of Dholavira, looking at it closely, because many of them could be sort of waste parts of the Turbinella pyrum, which could be used for making such kind of pendants or inlays and things like that. But then when you look at this particular shell closely, it has got a very different structure than which is of, say, the Turbinella pyrum. This has got a more sort of a flaky structure, which is completely made up of a lot of layers. And also because of which it becomes a little difficult to cut it or to sort of give it a kind of a shape, because if you look at these, it looks something like your pastry. So if you try to cut the thing, it is going to crumble, so it has to be cut in with some kind of a very sharp instrument to give this kind of a shape. So besides this, I have not been able to get any other parallels. And in the Harappa report, there are mention of some kind of, such what they would call it as a mother of pearl shell. But since I have not really been able to see such reports, so it is quite likely that, some of these shells, like the Placuna placenta, must have been collected as some kind of replacement for the mother of pearl shell, which is being reported from some of the sites, say like Nageshwar. And then even if you go even further west, say in Mesopotamia, they used to use a lot of mother of pearl in their inlays. And if you go even further west into, say, places like Israel and so on, you have like the pearl oyster, because of its nacre and lustrous nature. These have been made into sort of pendants, and they used to be used as tokens and things like that. So it is some kind of, aspect which might have been sort of carried forward maybe from a place like Mehrgarh, and it sort of filters down into the Indus Valley also. And maybe these people, you want to stick on to the idea of using such kind of objects, but then you do not have the right raw material for it, so you try to replace it with something which is locally available. Now I'll come to another interesting shells which have been also reported from some of these sites. So again, starting with Kundasi, I had come across these perforated Anadera shells. Now these are very large shells, which are also called as arc shells, and also called as cockles. And all over the world, you will find, especially in places like Australia and Southeast Asia, these have served as a very important food material. They have a lot of shell middens belonging to this particular shell, found all along the coast of Australia and even in Southeast Asia, where these were being consumed as food. And here in Kundasi also, we have evidence where the local inhabitants were collecting them as food. Now, similar shells have been also reported from the site of Bagasra. We have them at Shikarpur also, and we are having them at Dholavira. I've also seen them at Khirsara, but in very small quantities. Now, they also, the ones which I saw from Kundasi were quite interesting, because you would find that their edges were sort of abraded. Now, this particular shell, if you look at it in its natural form, it has got a kind of a serrated edge. You know, it has got a very sharp serrated edge. But these particular examples which were there, and quite a good number of them, they were sort of abraded along their margins, as though the whole, sharp razor-like or the sharp teeth-like margins which they have were completely eroded, and then they were having these kind of perforations made into them. So this was something very interesting. And similar kind of Anadira shells have been also reported in the report of Harappa as well as Mohenjo-daro, where they talk about it being used for keeping some kind of pigments. You also have it in the Mesopotamian civilization. They mention that at sites like Ur, and they were probably using it for keeping pigments to be used as cosmetics and things like that. And interestingly, none of these at this particular site, we do not find them containing anything. And also we have never found them in any of our graves, which have been, reported from places like even Northern India, for example, Farmana or Kalibangan. You do not have such kind of shells being reported there. But interestingly, in 2015, when I visited Rakhigarhi, and at Rakhigarhi, we did find one shell of this particular species. Which was there. It is in its, it was just an empty valve. Now that is also very interesting that this particular shell has traveled all the way up till Rakhigarhi during the Harappan civilization is quite interesting. And we also have a similar shell, but showing a different kind of perforation. This is reported from Kotadabadli. And here also we found these shells in a few of them were there. And this was again interesting because the location of the perforation, if you see it, it has been gouged out with some kind of an instrument. It is not very well done. It is not like the perforation which you would see here, which is very well made. But here it was some kind of a gouge was used to make the hole. Now, I was trying to look for some, again, ethnographic parallels in current day Indian society where people, they still use, which you of course find that there's very limited use of these particular shells. They mostly use it as food because the meat is of excellent quality as well as it contains a lot of iron. Besides food, you do not find them using it for any other purpose. So I was looking in some of the ethnographic literature, which comes from, say, the South Pacific Islands, even the Southeast Asia, where we find that these particular shells were also being used as, some kind of beads. They were being used as net sinkers. And you also find them that there used to be a certain game which the people were playing with these particular shell. So these are some kind of inferences we could also draw for the Indus Valley civilization, for the presence, to give some explanation to the presence of these kind of objects, which are quite interesting, at the same time difficult to really interpret. In the case of these abraded shells, I feel that these were probably used for shaping pottery, because even today also in some of the potters you will find, and especially in Europe, they used to use, they have something called as the cardial pottery, which was being fashioned by using cardium shells, which are also slightly similar to these shells, having a serrated edge. And when the pot is being thrown on the wheel, when it is rotating on a wheel, if you use the shell on its base, you can get a very nice margin around it. So this could be used for shaping the pot, for giving it some kind of a design and things like that. So probably this abraded edges which you see for these particular shells are definitely, these have been made intentionally, and they are very, very straight, as against this, which are always, these shells are curved. And probably this might be one reason for which these particular shells could have been used. Now, interestingly, here again, we have these little tiny shells called as Nerita, very commonly found all along our Indian west coast. Also, we find them on east coast. These occur in the rocky intertidal areas. You can find them in mudflats. A very, very commonly found small gastropod shell. This on the Konkan coast, I've seen that young children collect them for just like a snack. You can just collect them. You can pierce them with a little thorn or something, and you can just scoop out the meat and you can eat it. So this also forms a part of the local food in some of these along the west coast. But what I have been seeing is that this particular shell, with its umbo region or its apical region, it has been sort of abraded and a hole has been made. And again, these we do not find them in such large quantities. These have been found at Kuntasi. We have found it at Padri also. And it is really difficult to understand that Nerita shell, this kind of shell beads, for what purpose people could have been using them. But now if you go westwards, you find that this particular shell was also used during the Egyptian civilization association of these Nerita shells. You also find them used in the Levant region, and at the site of Jericho, it has been reported this particular, with the same kind of a perforation, a similar kind of shell has been reported from the Neolithic levels also. So somewhere we have to also consider the kind of traditions which might have been moving around during these particular times because of the movement of people going westwards and people coming eastwards. And it is maybe because of such kind of exchanges, ideas being passed down, traditions being continued, that some of these objects come to be at some of these sites. Recently, Prabodh and Dr. Y.S. Rawat, they had excavated the site of Kotada Badli. And so while looking at their shell material, you have things like, you have bangles. It is not so much in such great quantity as what we get it, say, at Khirsara, which is just across the site. But it had a few interesting shell objects like this particular one. And this is kind of the shell columella, here you can see, which is belonging to the Terminella pyrum. And such kind of columellas were retained by the Harappans. At least I have seen them in very large quantities at Dholavira, where they have been converted into making different kinds of objects, like, say, some kind of holders or, conical shaped points and things like that. But at Kotada Badli, what we have seen is that these were being shaped and given this shape, a sort of a cylindrical shape, and then it has these two little notches at its sides. And so some kind of either a string or, something was being tied to them. So the inference which I have drawn is that these probably represent some kind of net sinkers, which the people at Kotada Badli, it is a small settlement, might have been using them for doing a certain kind of fishing. And we need more ethnographic, work to sort of support this kind of an evidence to say that these might have been used for a certain kind of fishery. Maybe Dr. Abhiyan could later on think about whether it really these are net sinkers. So again, here I also took a lot of parallels which are available from literature, coming from places like the Arabian Peninsula, where they have a lot of stones which were sort of notched. Then you have even again in the Levant region, you have not shell material, but it is this kind of stone material which are given some sort of a shape, where they have these kind of notches given for tying a string and then maybe used as net sinkers. So this is something very unique which has been found basically from Kotada Badli. And with my experience of now having looked at so much of shell material from such different sites, I've really never come across this kind of objects before. And one I found being reported from the site of Kotada, it is there in their excavation report. And also I have seen a pictorial diagram of it in the Ahar from this chalcolithic site of Ahar, where also a similar kind of shaped object has been reported. So this whole thing about maybe it is serving as some kind of a net sinker or some other purpose. So definitely it was some kind of a tool which was being used for some function, which we still have to really reconstruct in a proper fashion. Another very commonly found objects, but again, not in such large numbers as these other shell objects like bangles and beads, we find are these olive shells. These are some very, very pretty shells, and you will find that, you know, their apex is sort of sawn off, then they are sort of abraded by rubbing them on some kind of a hard surface, maybe something like a sandstone. So you can get a very nice polished surface. So you can just break off the apex. And so these are very, again, very simply made shells, which were probably used as beads, maybe strung together. And at Kuntasi, we find that in this particular region, I don't have a photograph of it here now, but you find that a part of this thing has been completely broken down and it is sort of abraded, maybe so that for a string to pass through it. Now, these particular shells which we see have been found in fairly good numbers from the site of Padri. We have located it at even Kuntasi. We also see them at sites like Bagasra. Also, strangely, I have not been able to see them at the site of Dholavira in such good amounts. And again, looking to see if they find them elsewhere, olive shells, if you look at in North America, there are reports of these shells being used as some kind of beads and even as means of exchange. So there was a whole industry where these Indians were using these particular shells for making, they were used to slice this off and make them into some kind of beads, which were being exchanged, used in exchange as currency and so forth. Now, a continuation of these beads, we also see them in parts of peninsular India, in places like, you know, we have seen them at places like Inamgaon, we have seen them at Nevasa, and then if you go further south, sites like Halur, Tekalkota, they report the presence of such kind of perforated olive shells. At the Neolithic site of Kurugudu, they have reported this shell occurring with a human burial. So it is quite likely that some of these probably shells were being used as burial goods as well. But in any of our Harappan burials, we so far have not encountered this particular shell as a some kind of a burial offering. Use of this is also being seen a lot in West Asia as well as in places like Mesopotamia. It is also reported from Harappa. So there is something unique or important about this shell, that it occurs at certain sites, and then you find that its use is continued even in the later Neolithic, Chalcolithic periods in peninsular India as well. Another shell which is also commonly found at many of our Harappan sites, but again not in great amounts, are the dentalium shell, also known as the tusk shells. These have been reported from some of the Mesolithic sites in Gujarat, like you have at Loteshwar, you have at sites like Tarsang, Kanewal, they have reported them. And even at Langnaj also we have this particular dentalium shell as beads within associated with human skeleton. Now, this particular dentalium shell, it is, we find that I was able to identify two varieties where you have one which has got this, it's a fairly thick shell with 8 ridges, and then there is another one which is a smooth tube-like without ridges and very smooth shell. Now we find that there was a preference for using both, but we also see that there was a more preference for using the one which was of a smooth variety. And This has been reported from a few sites, like we have them at Padri, we have them at Dholavira, from Kundasi also, we have got them in good amounts. And looking at their, because it is not just the shell which has been found, but we have some very, very tiny beads which have been found at some of these sites. And looking at them carefully, because first I thought that they could be steatite beads, but then looking at them under a microscope shows that these are not steatite, but these are belonging to this particular Dentalium species. Now, Dentalium is again very interesting shell because it has been found, you know, if you look at it, it is reported from the site of Neolithic site of Mehergarh. If you again go even further westwards, it has been found throughout West Asia. It was a very, very important shell which has been used in their graves as grave goods. The famous, if you look at the Mount Carmel report, you have this very beautiful skull having a crown of this particular Dentalium shell beads, you know, you wearing some kind of a headgear. Similar one has been also reported from the site of Mehergarh as well. So somewhere Dentalium was being used in their burials, but so far from any of our burial sites, whether it is from Kalibangan or Parmana or Rakhigadi or any other ones, no such reporting has been done so far. And that is why it becomes really difficult to understand what its function might have been at these sites in Gujarat also. And interestingly, Dentalium, we do not see its continuity in the later periods. You know, like we see so many different kinds of molluscan shells, including the Turbinella, being used in the later cultural periods, like say the Chalcolithic, or if you come to the Iron Age period, or if you come to the historic period, you will see different kinds of shells like cowries, this olive shells, Turbinella pyrum, but we just see absolutely no evidence for Dentalium in any of these sites. So that is why they are somewhat enigmatic, you can say. And currently I am looking at the material also from Dholavira, and a more comparative study with these other sites of Padri and Kuntasi could help us get some more clues into what these exactly were being used for. So these are some of the microscopic images of Dentalium, because at times we also get confused with some tube-like shells which are found at some of these sites. So you have to look at them very carefully. They're not exactly Dentalium. It is another worm-like animal which also secretes a kind of shelly material. And these are tube shells which closely sort of look like Dentalium, but they are not. So we have these two species which were being used, the one with the ridges. So what they might have done is they might have taken sections of these shells of these and then used as beads, because they are very naturally perforated, and then you can string them and you can make them into beads. So here are some of them from Padri. You can see this very tiny bead which has been sort of quite well abraded to remove these edges to give it some kind of a smooth finish. These are very, very tiny beads. Here are some more of them. So what happens is, in the case of these very tiny beads, you can also confuse them with, at least at Padri it was the case, that some of them look like stone beads, could be even steatite beads, but then looking at them carefully, it does identify that these were made from these kind of shells like the Dentalium. So these are some very, very micro shell beads from Padri, where you can see them in cross section, very difficult, very, very fragile, but they had been quite carefully collected, because people are conscious of collecting steatite beads, so probably thinking that they are steatite, they would have taken efforts to collect them. Otherwise, if sometimes what happens is a lot of ignorance about certain other materials, other artifacts, leads to a lot of such kind of objects being lost, and you know, they are sort of go missing in the archaeological record. So this is just to take you, because we always trace back to the Neolithic settlement of Mehergarh, because that is where, that as early as the 7th millennium BC, we see the use or the large-scale utilization of marine molluscan shells. And as we all know, Mehergarh is not very close to the coast, it is fairly inland. So even at that particular time, there was so much of exchange going on, and there was a whole you can say system or networks which were bringing marine shells into these sites. And here you have these particular and what was interesting is that some of these shells are found to be associated with many of these skeletons. You find shells of the conus, you find shells of these particular dentalium occurring along with other materials like say copper bangles, copper beads and things like that. So here is a very nice headgear made with dentalium shells found from Mehergarh. And Mehergarh, another, if you see the article by Jaraj which appeared in the Pragdhara volume, they had this whole session on the, I think the Neolithic culture, which was probably organized by Dr. Rakesh Tiwari. And in that particular volume, there's a very nice image of a shell pendant, which is probably made from mother of pearl. Okay, and it sort of is like a human figure. So the whole thing of using some of these Placuna placenta shell pendant, what we see at say Kuntasi, might be some kind of a legacy which has been carried forward, because although along the Gulf of Kutch we do get a lot of pearl fishing was being done, you do get pearl oysters, but somewhere probably there was a more preference for using Placuna placenta because the people might have had more easy access to them compared to pearl fishing. Because during the Harappan times, we really have no evidence for pearl fishing because we do not have any evidence for any kind of pearls in our archaeological record. And even the shells from which the pearls are derived are never found at any of these settlements. So the whole idea of whether they were really doing pearl fishing is still under doubts. These are some dentalium shells which have been found in the along with the skeleton from Langnaj. So I like to sort of now round up my talk. So what we are seeing is that these objects, which are sort of hidden away amongst these very commonly found objects, which are always focused more upon, but these were made using some very easily available mollusks, maybe from local environment, derived from the local environment, mostly wherever there were mud flats. Most of these objects, we are seeing them at sites which are located quite close to the shore. They were using some very simple techniques, so they are not very labor intensive. They are not very investing a lot of time in making these kind of objects. So using very simple techniques like just abrading the shell, perforating them, gouging them, so to make them to be used in some simple objects. And such kind of objects, we can also trace it to the Neolithic Mehergarh, where such remains have been also reported in some of their graves. Now, why these are in a way important is because they do reflect that some activities were being carried out, which are not so easily identifiable in our archaeological record, because we might not have some direct evidence for them, something like, say, fishing or shellfish gathering, or even some kind of exchange and barter which was being done. And it is quite likely that, very often communities do exchange, at least in other parts of the world. It has been seen that the coastal people would exchange things like shells to more inland communities in order to procure food like, say, rice or grains and things like that. So through such kind of, they might have been meant for such kind of exchange. They might have been also used as some kind of symbol ornaments, as amulets, because at some of the sites like during the Chalcolithic period, for example, at Daimabad, we have a particular, association of this olive shell with that of a skeleton of a child, So this also could be some kind of a funerary object which is kept with the dead, and to give it some kind of maybe peace in the afterlife or whatever. These might have also got some kind of economic value. They might have been exchanged as tokens and also as burial goods. So this also in a way indicates that they may not have been the mainstream objects which were being used, shell objects which were in circulation during the civilization. Maybe there were presence of certain other non-Harappan communities. Already in Gujarat, we talk about that there were contemporary Chalcolithic cultures which were residing and which might have been doing some kind of regional level exchange with the local Harappan people. And maybe it is through such kind of exchanges that these objects would have resulted. And we find that it is not only at such small sites like Kuntasi or Padri that we are seeing these objects, but then we are coming across them at even some large sites like, say, Dhulavira. They have been also reported from sites like Harappa, and which goes to show that such large settlements were again interacting with maybe smaller settlements, and through which these objects were coming to such large centers as well. And post-decline, we see that some of these objects, like especially what we saw of the olive shells or even Tabanilla pyrum, they come to be associated with the later Chalcolithic cultures which are found in these regions. So in a way, sort of a continuity in the tradition is seen post-decline of the IBC also. So with this, I would like to, what point I'm trying to make is that such kind of objects, we really need to look at them more carefully to understand their role and not just treat them as some kind of minor insignificant objects, because these are certain small things which could also give you some larger insights into what kind of exchange systems were going on a local level, or even on a very large regional levels as well. So thank you. And I would like to acknowledge all these people who have been very cooperative, who have always supported my research in all these years. I'm really grateful to all of them. And thank you for your patience in listening to this talk. Thank you.